to know, but anyways, I'm happy to chair for today. I think it's 10 o'clock, so let's get started, and we'll start off with approval and receipt of the agenda items. Can I have a motion? Councillor Arneson, and seconded by Councillor Ferguson. All right, and so we have one item on the item for discussion, and this is the Murrayville and Brookswood water quality improvements. And this item, just to remind council, was given to us as a presentation on November the 30th. There was a number of topics that came up during that, and there was some recommendations made by staff in the presentation, and there was a referral motion at the time to refer it back to CPC for some further discussion, and that was carried. So that's where we are here today. And so you received in your package the presentation and materials. And so really we're just, this is an opportunity for staff, for council to ask questions, make comments, and to have a good discussion around this topic. So I'm going to open it up for anyone who would like to start and would like to open up and have some conversation and discussion around this topic. So if there's anyone that would like to speak, this is the chance. All right, we will start with Mayor Froese.
Yeah, thank you very much. Perhaps it might be.
Oh, we lost you.
Sorry, Mayor Froese, we've lost you there. I don't know what happened to your, we can't hear you.
And he's frozen too. The image is frozen.
Oh.
Ignore me.
Mayor Froese, you're froze.
Who's David?
Hello, Councillor Davis. Oh, there, Mayor Froese, we lost you there for a bit. Maybe you want to try again.
Jasmine and David, sorry for interrupting. Do you want to split screen so you
Seems Mayor Froese is just having a technical difficulty. We'll get him restarted.
Okay, so maybe we'll, if there's anyone others, no one's put their hand up yet to speak to this topic. Okay, Councillor Arneson, why don't you go ahead, and then we'll bring in Mayor Froese after.
Well, actually, it looks like the mayor might be ready, so I'll defer to him, and then you can take me up later.
Yeah, if we can.
Okay, back to Mayor Froese. Mayor Froese, you're on.
I'm just setting. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Sorry, I can't hear you, Mayor Froese. I don't know if you're speaking or not, but we can't hear you. We've lost you again. Sorry, Mayor Froese, can't hear you. Maybe Wendy, are you there with Mayor Froese?
Yes, I am. We're just going to see if we can rectify the situation. I think we could go on with Councillor Arneson.
Okay, I think we'll start then. Councillor Arneson, why don't you start us off and difficulties.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. And just wishing everybody a happy new year, a great 2021. I appreciate the opportunity to consider the continuation of this discussion. My perception from our previous council discussions is that there is no firm consensus on how to go.
Do you hear me? 1, 2, 3.
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, would you like me to continue, or would you?
I was working with IT. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's
so you go ahead.
Problem.
I will.
Councillor Arneson, why don't you finish and complete, and then we'll go to Mayor Froese after you.
Okay, thank you. So I think this is an opportunity, hopefully, where we can start to discern more detailed information. I do appreciate the staff report and the information that's led us to this point. But I, in particular, don't get the sense that I have an extremely comprehensive understanding of the costing models of either going with the staff proposal of what they are suggesting with respect to the Murrayville Brookswood water supply and the township enhancement of our mitigation of those water sources through Metro, and the idea that we have our own resilient and sustainable water supply. So if I look at those two options, I'm not completely myself understanding the totality of all those costs, because one of the things that I don't know about Metro, for example, although I know there's a motion to ask them to come and speak to us coming later on a different agenda, that the degree to which we can understand through modeling the entire cost of what potentially Metro Water is going to cost us in the future. Because as some may know, there was a recent, as of today, CBC report about the scarcity of water and the commodification of water. It's a very important topic when you're talking about the cost of your infrastructure and the actual resource. And we all know water is something you can't do without. And I think that there are mitigating circumstances due to climate change, scarcity, population, many, many different things that impact on this. So hopefully today we'll be able to dive in a little more into some of those elements, because I think it's important before we make a very substantive economic decision that we understand the parameters of both systems. So that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Froese?
Okay, thank you. So, I sat on the water committee over the last couple of years, and I know Metro Vancouver, the water committee is one of the oldest, I think it's over 100 years old in Metro Vancouver, and it's been working over the last 100 plus years to ensure that there's sufficient water in the Metro Vancouver region, and very aware of the growth in our region, and are always taking steps to ensure that there's adequate, safe supply of water. One thing that's on the horizon is additional capacity from the reservoirs by lowering the intake. And I know we've recently completed a pump station over Maple Ridge to help bring water to Langley. So but water is, is a resource that needs to be, cherished and protected. We're lucky we have so much water here in Langley and Lower Mainland. The supply, certainly from Metro Vancouver, is a good supply. It costs us money. It's not going to get cheaper in the future. It's mostly the cost is in transporting the water through the pipe system and cleaning the water so it's safe for us to drink. And then Township Langley takes over. So, once I see there's more speakers, so I would like to see this move forward, at least to the budget, because there is a cost savings, and I know that our staff monitor the groundwater to ensure that we're not, depleting the groundwater supply and blending it with Metro Vancouver water to protect our water source, and also to save some money from our taxpayers. We're fortunate to be in this position to have good groundwater that we can use, but we certainly don't abuse it. And so I would like to see this move forward to council, and when the time comes, I can make the motion, or someone else certainly be supportive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I guess we're just getting a little bit recapped as to why we are where we are. So it seemed to me fairly straightforward when the report came, and I must say that we've dealt with this over many terms that I can recall, and it all started with, before my term actually, when Aldergrove Water ran into a similar situation as we're finding in Murrayville and Milner, with that smell and the cosmetic, let's say, aspects of our water supply. So I was surprised that I didn't mind that we deferred it to a CPC to discuss a bit more, because you're looking at $6 million one way or $6 million another way, sort of, in a very simplistic point of view. Either you're going to spend that money on purchasing water over the next several years, or you might invest that in your own infrastructure. But I was very surprised that there seems to be, and maybe we need to clarify that today, members of council that feel that we should not be protecting our water, groundwater supply and using it as we are now, which is blending and having that ability to control how much water we're buying and how much we're using from the ground. I mean, here's a perfect example today. I mean, there's no question that the aquifers are quite full this morning, and every year they are full to the brim many times of the year. Maybe Council Davis, being a farmer, can attest to that too, that you know, when he's out there with his muddy boots, that's the time when there's plenty of water to be had. So it's a resource that sits there. Yes, there's always a danger of depleting it, but by having this blending system that we have and the well monitoring, we seem to have an ideal situation. So I'm just saying this, Mr. Chair, because maybe staff can jump in too and help. Can we all figure out why we are where we are today with this sort of, well, should we or shouldn't we? And you know, maybe we need to be in the should be, shouldn't be mode for another day or two, but at some point, like the mayor said, we need to make a decision and move forward. What concerns me is that the report that we had from October talked about somewhat of an urgency to get going with this project. This is an October 5th report that's in our package today that talked about moving forward from, actually it started in 2019. So we've been a year and a bit fiddling with this already, and it seems that staff is saying, look, let's get on with it, because every month that goes by, we're spending more and more money on purchasing water. And of course, the report also highlights that it's going to go from 78 cents to $1.09 in 2024. That's 140% increase, and who knows where it'll go after that. And I think it's a good point that the mayor said too, that the Metro need to look at a good supply of water for the whole region. So if there is a little less dependency on it, you know, I'm sure they would like the money, but I think the little less dependency on the water supply is a positive thing for the whole region. So we are very fortunate to be in an area that has that. Not every municipality does. You know, Richmond, you wouldn't want to be fiddling with the water there because the table is so much lower. Then you get into the more urbanized municipalities where they don't have aquifers, I suppose. So we're in a very enviable position in that respect. So I'd like to see us move forward on this, but now there's a motion being proposed this afternoon. And I suppose maybe I would like an opinion from other members of council, whether that's going to help or hinder or where we're going with this. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that sort of clears the mind a little bit from where I'm coming from. Maybe staff can comment, or yourself, Mr. Chair, or other councilors. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's take some more comments from council first, and then maybe we can ask some questions to staff. But Councillor Richter.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have concerns about this report because of the options we've been presented with. And I don't think it's a full range of options. And I think a very important option has been left off the table, given that we are going, hopefully, into a COVID recovery period. So for us to rush right out the gate right now and start pumping $6 million into building a water treatment plant at a time when we don't know the full range of the COVID recovery costs that we're going to have to be dealing with, I think it's a bit short-sighted on our part. I don't buy the argument that it's our job to bail Metro out. I think it's the other way around. I think it's Metro's job to help the municipalities out. That's why Metro exists, and that's why the Metro water function exists. I also don't feel that the costing that we've been given is adequate, and this goes back to the comments that Councillor Arneson made, and I fully agree with her comments. And for that reason, I don't think we should be moving on this today until after we've had a presentation from Metro. Councillor Arneson did reference that there is a motion coming forward on our regular agenda to have Metro come in and do a presentation with us, and perhaps that's one of the questions we could put to them. Do they want us to relieve the pressure on them for water? I'd be very surprised if they said yes, but I think that's a valid question that we could ask them. So my preferences are not to rush with this yet, and the other thing is, how long before this thing gets built? And what's the total operating costs going to be? Like, there's so many questions around this that haven't been done, and I'm tired of us rushing into putting projects into the budget that then just sit there as surplus money year after year after year. So I support Councillor Arneson's position. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Whitmarsh, Mr. Chair. I actually kind of echo Councillor Arneson's position and also Councillor Richter. So I mean, I'm going to have some questions about the report, the technical report from Kerwood, page 4, for example. You know, groundwater at risk of containing pathogens, and so maybe we can get to that before we consider some questions. I mean, I find it a bit strange. I mean, I did want to make the motion to have Metro Vancouver come and explain to us their option, because I feel as well we're maybe not getting the entire sales pitch from Metro Vancouver, for example, and I don't really want members of this council to speak for Metro. I'd like to have Metro speak for Metro and explain, you know, what their proposal is and what their long-term plans are and why their product is better, just to set up a bit of an idea that they should explain to us why we should be purchasing Metro Water if it's more expensive. You know, for example, on page 4, as a bit of a preview, it is recommended the township address the identified hazards, as some of the existing hazards may influence the overall water quality to a degree where the proposed treatment plant may not be able to adequately treat the water to potable standards. So here, groundwater is at risk of contamination. It's my understanding that the water coming from Metro Vancouver will not be at risk of contamination. And this is where I started off at the beginning, that I'm not sure why we're getting into the water treatment business when we have a good supplier, a stable supplier that treats millions and millions, I don't even know the quantity of water, for millions and millions of residents every day. And I don't know why we're duplicating that infrastructure. So that's my core position. I'm not saying I'm voting no on the 6 million. I'm just asking the question. I'm not sure why we're heading down the path of rushing into duplicating this infrastructure. So now if we're at 140,000 residents, let's say, or 135, and we're on our way to 250 over the next, 25, 30, 40 years, why are we getting in the water treatment business when we're adding the residents at the quantity that we're adding, when we have a perfectly adequate supplier that supplies millions of peoples around the region, where apparently, us pulling some water out of the ground for 100,000 people is somehow going to help Metro Vancouver. It seems absurd to me. So the idea would be that I think we should really be questioning whether we should be expanding water treatment facilities and getting into the water treatment business prior to doing that, not just passing a motion and putting it in the budget in the space of a few months. I don't think that's responsible.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you very much. I know I'm a little off topic, but thank you very much for all your messages and concerns. And while I was out of business, I'm back now. So thank you very much. You guys all helped me get through tough times.
Welcome back.
Okay. First of all, in the report, it uses some terminology like temporary, and like they're wanting to put it in a temporary, in a container van. And I think that the components that they're putting in a temporary container van are probably the same components that they're going to put in a permanent structure. And I know that it has been mentioned about security here. I don't know. I'm just wondering if that's a bad word. Another word I've read in here is we abandon. And I don't know if abandon is the right word either in the report of some wells, because for a long time we've used blending to formulate a cost for the resident. And water is one thing on the council's agenda for every that we do: potholes, water, garbage pickup. Water's huge. And Councilor Woodward's commented that, I'm just jogging my memory here, about we don't know how much water is there. Well, that's a very important question. We know what can happen all of a sudden if you don't manage the water properly. Look at what happened down in Africa. But anyhow, we I think that we need to um, we need to do a lot more work on this. I think that I can remember in this when Bill Vanderzam bought the greenhouse in Milner, the land in Milner, and he built a greenhouse. And the fellow from Holland came, Mr. Benny, and said that, Davis, you'll never ever have a water shortage in Langley or in the Fraser Valley. And that wasn't too long ago. You know, it may have been 30 years ago or 35. Anyhow, and I always think of that because he came from a region where they had to deal with water shortages. And he came to Langley and there's no shortages. But now that's the first thing we do. Every spring we put a water restriction on. So water is hugely important. So I'm not trying to be cheeky, but I think temporary and the words like abandoned wells. I think that one way we can control it, but it has to be done properly for potable. So I think we've got I don't know if putting $6 million aside right now is the way to go. I'm kind of out of the loop a little bit, and but I know that this is very important. I'm really not saying anything. I'm sorry, but we have to look at this and do the right thing because water is one of the top 4 things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kunst. Sorry, you're on mute, Councillor Kunst.
Through acting chair, to staff, what is the difference between what we're currently, attempting to do in Brookswood and Murrayville than what we are already doing in Aldergrove with water treatment?
Mr. Chair, would you like staff to respond?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Sethi.
Good morning. Yeah, it is the same in terms of its scope. It is just a smaller version of what is currently being done in Aldergrove with respect to the treatment. It is the same in concept, as I said, and it's just a smaller version of what we're already doing.
And have we seen any problems in Aldergrove treatment currently or in the past that we could see if we did the same thing here in Brookswood and Murrayville?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I guess it depends on what is intended or what is meant by a problem, in quotation marks. There's always challenges with delivery of water that has to be within a certain very strict standards for obvious reasons, for potable purposes, and a complex system that consists of both a regional supply as well as a local supply. So there's always complications and there's always ways to find, I guess, technical solutions to issues and challenges. But inherently, I guess, I can share with council that a groundwater supply is less likely to have contaminants than a surface water supply, because of the fact that it's more protected. A sort of a surface water supply, such as the one that is feeding the regional system, because of its exposure to elements, because of its exposure to wildlife, it has more opportunities for introduction of contaminants than a groundwater source would have.
Okay. Yeah, that was my question. Thank you. I'm personally comfortable with the information that we've received, and understanding that we have this amazing resource in our community. I know it is a lot of money, but at the end of the day, in 3 to 5 years, we'll be on our way to paying it back. So I'm comfortable moving forward. I think we have received a lot of information about it, and yeah, so I'm comfortable in moving this forward.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Ferguson for a first time to speak on this. Sorry, we can't hear you, Councillor Ferguson.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome back, Councillor Davis. You look 10 or 20 years younger. I can't believe it. Anyway, I'm going to do a little bit of history, as much as I can't remember as far back as Councillor Davis, but I believe that Langley Township was receiving Metro Water and Metro Sewer before we came into members of the Metro, as we used to be GBRD. Anyway, so that's a little bit of history. But now we have and continue to have a blended system. We are not getting into the water treatment system. We've been in the water treatment system for as long as I can remember. So that's going back many, many years. For us to change that, well, that would mean we're getting out of the water treatment business. So those are two things to clarify. Now, it's good to ask questions, as Councillor Long really mentioned a lot of good points. Aldergrove Water, certainly Brookswood Water, other things in the past where have been some concerns. We've addressed those concerns. In fact, I keep mentioning it, between the chloramine and chlorine argument back several years ago about what works best. Now there's different types of filtration and things change in the future, but as things change in the future, and I'm referring to Metro Vancouver now, guess what? They cost more money. And I've said before, and I'll say that to Metro Vancouver as well, whom I trust 100% because we use their water. We have 100% faith in their water, but that doesn't mean to say we get out of the water business and water treatment business. Yes, we have to ask questions. We have to ask questions about the quality, about drinking standards, about the future, about the quality of our aquifers and also of our wells. I understand over the years, many years ago, we've actually decommissioned some of our wells and we've used other sources. So there is a very well blended system within Langley, and it's good that we can have Metro Vancouver speak. The sooner the better, because we need to address this issue. Costs, yes, we have to look at costs. We have to look at how we're going to finance things. Other people have mentioned, and rightfully so, about this COVID and COVID costs and the impacts of COVID costs on our budget going forward. So all these things have to be looked at, addressed, but I'm still 100% convinced. We're often challenged by saying we don't plan for the future. Blended water in Langley, and Langley is the envy, I believe, of the Metro Vancouver Regional District, if not other parts of the province as well, as an excellent system. It worked. Our system works. One last thing. Farmers use aquifers. We have many residents have private wells that use aquifers. And again, they change as the summer. I've been in an area in Salmon River where we ran a little bit dry in the summer. We had to order water sometimes, not that often. So it all depends on what type of system you have. It works. It's a Langley problem. And I think we're going to be they'll be discussing this 10 or 20 years from now, because water has always been a challenge within Langley, but I'm supporting the blended system. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Froese.
Great. Thank you very much. So yeah, just a couple comments. I appreciate Councillor Ferguson reminding us that we were part of the Greater Vancouver Water District and the Greater Vancouver Sewage Drainage District long before we joined the Greater Vancouver Regional District in 1985. So we've been partner with the region for many, many years. And I just want to remind Council that Metro Vancouver Water District is us. It's not them selling us water. We're not buying from them. It's us. We are part of it. We work together, and that's the beauty of having a regional district, is that we are able to, as a region, share these very, very expensive projects and resources that we are vital to all of our municipalities. So we are part of it, and they're not looking for profit. This is just they service their member municipalities as we service our residents, and that's to cost recovery. So just to maybe clear the deck on that, and I'm really looking forward to having a presentation from Metro Vancouver Water to our council, because I think it's really great to have that education. And I don't propose to speak as a staff member at Metro Vancouver, but I did have some little bit of knowledge being on the committee of the work that's being done, and and certainly wanted to convey that to council, but we're looking forward to it. And I have extreme amount of faith in our staff and in the consultant. Like, we've been doing this for years. I've been managing wells on my farms for years until just recently when we were able to hook up. But it's certainly not new to us. This is something we've been doing for a long time, and I have a lot of faith in our staff and able to manage the aquifer and manage the water quality. So, Mr. Chair, I'll be happy to move the recommendation that is on the agenda, and I'll also move it.
Okay, I'd like to just to maybe take the comments of the two people that have indicated here, and then we'll come back to your motion, Mayor Froese.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Long.
Yeah, thanks so much. I stated my position earlier on, and then we've had some other discussion, which is helpful. But I did hear from some a concern about the cost. So I'm, here I'm looking again at the KW report, and on page 13, well, 12 and 13, it outlines the costs quite clearly. And I'm just, perhaps there's confusion that we could, if there is confusion, we could get that straightened out, because it does specifically talk about how much we're going to be spending on water if we don't do something, and how much we're going to invest in these treatment plants if we get underway with it. And it seems to be a very positive financial picture that could even get better should we, have a wet season where we can draw more water. So, Mr. Chair, is it possible that staff could come out and support their recommendation and help us by telling us a bit more about the financial aspect? Because if that is a concern, and we've talked about COVID here, it seems to me the concern is the opposite. The concern is with COVID and with trying to manage our dollars better and safety. I mean, it was interesting that Mr. Saifi mentioned how exposed the water system is in Metro. I'm not saying there's a fear there, folks, but it is an exposed water, surface water source, whereas we're drawing from aquifers, which is safer. So to me, everything points towards that solution, but maybe staff can clarify the money. Is it going to cost us more? Is this something that we should be considering holding back on because of COVID, or am I more accurate in my assumption that it's the opposite, that we should really be looking at a better investment of our dollars, and it might end up cheaper and safer?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe Mr. Saifi or maybe Mr. Backen, I'm not sure if there's more information that you could provide or clarity to what's written on page 4 around the finances. There's the cost of it, capital cost, and then there's an $333,000 in operating expense. I'm wondering if maybe just there's some clarity or some comments you might want to make that would help council.
Mr. Chair, not hearing anything from Mr. Backen, I'll start. And I also advise council that I do have both Mr. Larson as well as Mr. Zweig with me. As you know, Mr. Larson's department is responsible for planning and design of our water resources infrastructure, and Mr. Zweig's department is responsible for maintaining and operating our assets. They're both experts in the field, and collectively a lot of experience and brain trust in the room. So I've been seeking their input and advice throughout the process, and I continue to do that. With that, perhaps I can just share with council one slide from a previous set of slides that were shared with council. And Mr. Chair, are you able to see this?
Yes, we can see it.
And what I can advise is that based on the current rate structure that Metro Vancouver has, which is always subject to change. In fact, they are currently, they being Metro Vancouver, and this is not, I guess, in conflict with what was referenced earlier by Mayor Froese, in that we are working together. That said, by its very nature, Metro Vancouver is responsible for the entire region, whereas we are interested in, the interest of the municipal residents in the township of Langley and businesses in Langley. So we don't fault them for this, but the fact is that they have to take care of the various parts of the region. And what that means is that we are subject to potential changes that may not suit us well, but rather because of the needs in other parts of the region, they are being necessitated. What I mean by that, again, for more clarity, is that there may be a need for system improvements that cost millions of dollars that Metro Vancouver then chooses to partially offset through the rate structure. So we are kind of beholden to the rate structure, but based on the current rate structure, this is the slide that was referenced previously, that was shared with council. We anticipate the total operating and capital cost to be as you see on the screen. And I think what was referenced earlier, perhaps by councillors Arneson as well as Richter, is really the better understanding of overall costs of water as opposed to what we pay for it. I think perhaps there's a need for us to understand that the cost of water is not just, I guess, reflected in terms of a monetary perspective or from a monetary perspective, but rather, you know, from a environmental perspective, from a social perspective, and the fact that over the years, we have decided collectively in the Township of Langley to not have residents measure or pay for on a cubic meter basis for the water that's being delivered to them. So that, in fact, is something that council may wish to direct staff to pursue further. But in terms of the current structure that we have, all residential uses pay a flat fee. Non-residential uses pay based on, I guess, the usage on a per cubic meter basis. And that may create a bit of a mentality, if you will, that, you know, there is no need for us to conserve water. We have not suffered from a shortage of water historically, not just in Langley, but throughout the region. The restrictions that we are required to observe and respect are because we don't want to be in a situation where we have to, I guess, go without water. It's really just educating our residents throughout the region of the value of the water, and perhaps we can do more in that area. As far as the finances are concerned, though, we are assuming that we are going to have to purchase more bulk water from Metro Vancouver, as well as requesting council to consider allocating appropriate funding for us to proceed with what staff, based on technical, I guess, justifications that have been presented, as well as environmental, as well as resiliency of our system, for a $6 million, give or take, cost, I guess, capital cost to be approved for us to proceed with treatment in Maribel and Brookswood areas to address our current and future needs. I hope I wasn't too, I guess, rumbling, but rather responded to the council's questions that were raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I think that's helpful. Maybe just for clarity for me, on the operating costs of $333,000 that's mentioned, is that over and above what we currently spend or did spend on treatment in the area? Is that's an additional cost, or that's includes what we might already spend on operating costs?
No, that would be over and above.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. Councillor Richter.
Yes, thank you. I believe blended water is a false economy because I don't think it captures all the costs that go into the provision of that water, as well as the unintended consequences. Now, Councillor Ferguson referred to the fact that we've had a blended system in place for a number of years. Yes, we have. And that blended system has not necessarily been equitable. For example, the area that I live in, our wells went dry every summer because water was being siphoned off the Hoppington to feed the Aldergrove needs. So I just don't get that a blended system is the best system, because I've personally suffered negatively at the hands of a blended system. I also query if have we ever gone back and looked at the full costs that we have spent in this township on cleaning up year after year, week after week, month after month, the water discoloration problems in Murrayville? And how do we know if we do put this new plant in, we're not going to have the same problems again? I just don't believe that the full costs that have been laid before us are in fact the true costs. And so, no, I will not support this motion going forward. I think we need to get off blended water. We need to leave the aquifers there for the people on private wells and for the farmers. And the sooner we get used to the fact that water does have a cost, and that is the cost that we're going to have to pay Metro Vancouver for it, rather than hiding that cost in blended water, the better off we're all going to be in the long term. So I don't support moving forward with this. I never will. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate an opportunity to speak to this again because it helps to understand the rounding out, I think, of all the parameters. I just want to follow up in a way on what Mr. Safi has suggested, and I appreciate the costing model. One of the things that I personally believe is extremely important in all of this is a consideration that however we feel about groundwater versus metro water, that there is a component of resiliency and insurance vis-a-vis making sure that if there is ever an issue with metro water for whatever reason, either through emergency, through an earthquake, something or other, I believe if we are following really the guidelines of the Sustainability Charter, we need to be able to ensure that local residents have some opportunity to receive water in a system that's somewhat viable, that is potentially not the the Metro source in its entirety. Obviously, we get it from Metro from their watershed. What I'm trying to get at really is that I think it would be more productive to not advance one proposition over the other, to get more information about both, because I don't think we have a really substantive understanding of what the actual cost of each of those water infrastructures and resources are. So that's number one. But number two, looking down the road, I'm going to be a strong advocate. If we are looking to go onto Metro Water, I think hand in hand, we need to look at water metering, as has been suggested as the best management practice. I think it's actually negligent not to do that under the circumstances, both for the protection of our groundwater and to ensure a reasonable rate for our ratepayers for their water. So I think that those things are really critical, and I am personally not today prepared to go forward to say yes to a proposal when I don't know all of the detailed costing items. And I want to do a comparison across those two and then suggest perhaps that we need to consider what the overall outcome would be of one or the other, or maintaining them both together as an option. But I don't find myself in a position today to be able to make that decision. So I won't be supporting going forward with the $6 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. I wonder if maybe now's the time, Mr. Chair, to maybe, how much time do we have? Let's hear a bit more, to maybe get an answer or maybe some additional information on what I highlighted earlier on page 4 of the Kerwood report, which doesn't sound great, but maybe is not as serious as it sounds, such that, may influence the water quality to a degree where a proposed treatment plant may not be able to adequately treat the water to drinkable standards. That's a bit of a concern. Maybe I can get some more clarity on that.
Okay, Mr. Seppi?
Mr. Chair, did you want staff to comment?
Sorry, yeah. If you could maybe just respond to the question from Councillor Woodward about, he had a question around on page 4 of the Kerwood report. There was
last paragraph, page 4.
Yeah, GARP. GARP, it's the acronym.
Yes, Your Worship. Sorry, Mr. Chair. As Council is aware, engineering analyses take an approach that is sort of, similar to an airplane landing, if you will. At a very first stage, it's very conceptual. Then you try to give it more detail, and you look at things in a bit more detail, and it's incumbent upon engineers by the I guess the professional ethics that they're sworn by, to make sure that they cover everything. And I think this is very normal for an engineering report, a technical report, to outline the fact that more analysis may need to be undertaken. It is not suggesting that it is actually, there's been any evidence of such potential hazard. But as an example, if a source is close to a river, or there are certain criteria or indicators present, then all they're saying is that there needs to be more analysis before a system's been designed. That's all they're suggesting.
Okay, I think that's helpful. I mean, yeah, you're right. It does say may, it doesn't say, will or likely or anything like that. So I take the fact that it's a warning that, maybe there's something else to consider and analyze. But I think that's another reason to maybe slow this down a little bit. Here we are, we got some that just want to approve this. I'm not quite there yet. I mean, that to me jumps out to me as a pretty significant issue, where I don't know if we have that issue with the Metro Vancouver water supply option. That we're gonna maybe purchase water from Metro. Did they send us a paragraph that reads like that? I mean, I hope not. So I mean, maybe also too, the other thing I'd like to consider maybe before the motion is voted on is see what others have to say about it. But we're making a pretty significant decision that affects a lot of people directly. Do people want to potentially pay a little bit more for a regional source of water run by people that treat water on a massive scale? Or do we want to be pulling it out of the ground, which potentially has some additional risk of contamination? So as I read in this technical report, so I think we should be careful to make this kind of decision without some public consultation, at least asking people, do you want to save a bit of money and stick with a blended system, or do you want to go with what I consider to be, maybe incorrectly considered to be likely a higher quality water source, more reliable source that every other municipality is using? For some reason, we want to go a different direction. I'm still not understanding why what's good enough for Surrey and Burnaby and Port Moody and Richmond and Vancouver somehow isn't good enough for the township of Langley. So I'm still trying to see why that is, and if we're trying to transition from a rural community, with a city rural community from 60,000 or 70,000 when we had this system, on our way to 200, 250, like I said, maybe we should be looking at a way of doing things differently rather than just doing things as we've always done them, and just really not seeing a lot of justification for dismissing the Metro Vancouver option so quickly as some are doing here.
Okay, thank you. I'll take the last comment from Councillor Ferguson, and then I'll take a motion from Mayor Ferguson.
Can you hear me now or not? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, you can hear me. Great. Okay. Yes, I've heard a lot of debate here today, and there's a lot of questions being asked. Most people know my position that I support the blended water, and it has been around, and it's not something that we take lightly. Protection of the water, having the right standard, but there's some questions that be asked. I know that prefer mostly to what Councillor Arneson said. She's not 100% clear on the answer. So I was wondering if I put it through to staff. You've heard, if I made a Mr. Safety or Mr. Larson or whoever else, you've heard some of the questions today. Is there any way you can get back a report if we indeed refer this today to answer some of these questions regarding quality, regarding surface water contaminants versus groundwater contaminants, versus also the COVID, the costing out, the pipe standards, the other challenges, how the comparison of existing operation and future operation, the methodology of closing down certain pipes and certain wells in summertime, so that there's not a challenge for residents. If I may, through the chair, are you listening to some of those things? If I may, you could have an answer through the chair.
Mr. Seffi, I don't know if you have any comments about that, providing additional information in a report that goes beyond the report that we have. I think maybe that's the question.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, staff will endeavor to provide additional information, but looking at the volume of reports and memorandums and presentations that have been done over the past, I think, maybe just over a year or so, as well as the verbal comments that I've provided today and previously. I don't know if there's anything else that could be added, but certainly if there's a direction from council to summarize all of that in another report, a more comprehensive, full report, staff will provide those certainly to council upon direction, keeping in mind that it will likely be a summarization and consolidation of previous reports and analyses, again, based on best technical advice in terms of, I guess, the recommendation to proceed. It is, in staff's opinion, the recommendation is in front of council. It hasn't changed. I don't want to repeat myself, but at risk of doing that, there are several reasons fundamentally as to why the staff recommendation is what it is. Options have been analyzed, and we can explore as one potential additional avenue that we have not explored in recent years is the subject of metering. We can certainly provide more information in that area, and the true costs, again, true in quotation marks, true cost of delivering water, which may be taken for granted by some people, some residents. We can provide more information in that area, but beyond that, we look for council to provide us with direction.
Okay, you know what? That's a good point, if I may, through the chair. You know, that I remember sitting in at a Metro meeting. I'm sure the Metro reps would know this, and they were talking about that all communities that delivered Metro water should be on meters. And I know that some of the mayors that didn't have the meter system were certainly voicing a concern about the cost of providing that infrastructure, not delivering it, but installing the actual meters in every property that gets water. I guess my property would, but I don't think I have a meter on mine. I know that some of the subdivisions installed meters, but they haven't been implemented, from what I understand. So there's all sorts of questions that, you know, I'm thinking that down the road, well, towards the end of this particular meeting, which will end in 7 minutes, I think perhaps we need a referral, and each and every one of us councillors should send in our questions, and in that way we need answers. And some councillors agree, some will disagree, but at least we can ask those questions. And certainly I'll wait, Mr. Chair, to see where you're at with the speakers list, but that'd be something I would propose a referral so the questions could be answered, and people, I guess, that are unhappy right now with the reports, or unhappy they don't have enough questions answered, can perhaps get those questions answered. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what we'll do is we're running out of time, but I think we've had a lot of people have a chance to speak. I'm going to take the motion from Mayor Froese.
Well, Mr. Chair, can I quickly I had my hand up here.
Yeah, I recognize that. We've had lots of opportunity to speak, but Councillor Long, is there something very specific?
Yeah, well, I think so. And if you don't mind, I'll try and make it quick here. I mean, it seems to me the staff are 100% supportive of their recommendation. Council is really split on it. So it's kind of an odd situation to begin with. So I won't have an argument as to who believes who. But there has been a suggestion that we bring in the Metro Vancouver folks for a discussion. So rather than pulling a vote now, which may be split down the middle, it's such an important issue. And I totally agree that we need to be firmly believing in where we're going. This isn't, like Councillor Davis, he's nodding his head. Water, number one. It's probably top of the list. Why don't we get this presentation from Metro? Staff have heard of all our concerns, and maybe, you know, I don't want to, you know, push us in any direction that's not comfortable. I think that might be a wise way to go. Maybe we could have that motion now instead of waiting till the next meeting too, because who knows what will happen by then. Let's get a presentation from Metro staff on their water delivery, and that will help us in our decision. That's my thought, rather than taking a motion now.
If I could speak to that.
I think this is a CPC meeting. Anything that happens would have to go back to the council table anyways. So any decision we make today doesn't mean it's final. No final decision is made today. This is just taking it back to the council table. So I guess I'm interested to know what the motion is that Mayor Feroz has. I don't even know what this motion is, but I think we'll open it up to hear what Mayor Feroz has to say. And
thank you. And I appreciate the comments from members of council, but this motion is, as you said, Mr. Chair, is not a decision. It is, we have to, we're in a rut. We have to get this vehicle unstuck, and it's stuck in a rut at CPC, which is a great place to discuss it. But now we need to move forward to bring it into the budget for our consideration at that time. So it's not a decision we're making today, other than to move this along so that council can then make the decision. The whole purpose of CPC was to have this discussion, which I think we've done. And I think there's a good point made. If any member of council still requires more information, that staff are always willing to sit down with any member of council to go over their concerns. But my reason to move this is that, let's move it to council where it should sit. We've had great discussion. And I look forward to a presentation from Metro Water, but we do have to make decisions along the way. And I think this is just one step, but it's not, it's a decision to move it to council. It's not a decision to actually do the job. So that's why I will move it as it states, because it is really in a way, it's a referral as it states. It's for council's consideration of approval to enable the construction. So I will move it. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a seconder? I'll second it, or Councillor Coons. Councillor Coons will second it.
Well, okay.
So this is a motion to refer it back to the council table for decision. We can certainly have we have a motion later to consider a report from Metro Vancouver. So there's nothing stopping that from happening. This is just taking it back to the council table. This is what this referral is. So I'm not just. Maybe to Wendy or to Mr. Beck, and we have an 11 o'clock stop. Is that firm, or how does that work?
We do have a special meeting scheduled to begin at 11 o'clock. That meeting can begin anytime between 11, but no later than 11:30. But it will, unfortunately, with meetings the way they are scheduled today, it will run other meetings later.
Yes, okay. So, all right, so we're obviously near the end of our time. I know there's a number of people that would like to speak. I guess I'd ask that you not repeat necessarily all the things you've already said and try and keep it succinct, and we'll go through that. So I'm not sure the order, but I think it's hard to know from my end here, but we'll start with Councillor Richter.
Yes, thank you. I like Councillor Long's suggestion. And I would second his motion to defer the referral to the budget process until after the Metro presentation has taken place. If that's what Councillor Long was moving. If it's not, then I'll move that.
Okay, so this is a deferral of Councillor Feroz's motion. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, what I'm saying is let's not send it right away to budget with the intent that it's going to get approved at budget. Let's let it go to budget, but let's let it go to budget after we've had the Metro presentation.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, may I make a suggestion?
Yes, you may.
In this case, I believe what Councillor Richter would be doing an amendment to the motion to specify a specific time in which it could come forward. So the amendment would read that it would be forwarded to council after the Metro Vancouver presentation.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, so so Councillor Richter, you're making that amendment?
Well, I thought Councillor Long was, and I would second it.
I agree. So in other words, the amendment is that this be referred, just like the mayor said, and that a presentation, following a presentation by Metro Vancouver.
Okay, so Councillor Long, you've made that amendment, and Councillor Richter.
Councillor Richter did, and I'll second it because I didn't ask you.
Okay, so Councillor Richter makes the amendment. Councillor Long will second the amendment. Okay, so speaking on the amendment, I have hands up. Do all of you want to speak to the amendment, which is to wait to bring it back to the council table after we've had the Metro presentation. That's the amendment. Okay, so Councillor Davis, you'd like to speak to that?
Well, I just comment, yes, absolutely. Mayor Feroz is right. We've already had 5 wells shut down in Murrayville. The truck's stuck. We got to get it out. But it would be really good to listen to Metro Vancouver. It might solve some of the problem, my decision making. So thank you. I would support it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure whether it's needed and as a friendly suggestion. I won't call it amendment. I don't want to get caught up in policy. It's a fact that there were questions asked today. Other members of council might have some more questions they want to send in. Copy us all, and let's get some more answers. And I don't know, sure if staff heard that. It's at the memo. And we are ready to address some of those questions. So I don't know if that's part of a friendly amendment or whether staff heard that anyway. If I may, through the chair, did you hear those questions? Through the chair to Mr. Safi or Mr. Backen? Sorry.
I think staff probably has heard our questions, and as Mayor Feroz has suggested, any one of our council members is certainly able to ask those questions to staff and get the answers that they need at any time. So I'm not sure we'll ask for an additional report at this point. I think we're moving forward to hearing.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. We want to ask those questions. We want to get some of these answers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, for sure. Councillor Long?
No, I'm good.
You're good. Okay. Councillor Arneson?
Thank you. I'm in support of the amendment. The only thing I would like to bring forward is the date certain for a Metro presentation. I would like to have more of an idea about when they would be able to present, so it doesn't unduly slow down our budget process with respect to this agenda item. So
maybe a friendly change then would be as soon as possible, because this is urgent. In the amendment, as soon as possible.
I mean, that would somewhat help. I have no idea about the availability of Metro to do such a thing. I'm sure they'll do it virtually, but I just don't know, not having had any experience about who would be making the presentation and when they're available to do it. But certainly I think it needs to be underlined. It has to be in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think we'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment?
Great.
1, 2, 3, that's unanimous for the amendment. So we're back to the main question, which is to refer this to council after the Metro presentation, which will be scheduled as soon as possible. And Councillor Woodward.
Follow question.
Councillor Woodward, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. Yes, thank you. I'd like to speak to that. So, you know, I didn't schedule this meeting to be only an hour. So, I mean, I would have liked to have had more time to discuss the future of water in the township of Langley. I don't consider council debate on the issue to be a rut. I consider it to be a pretty significant issue that we could not probably spend enough time on. And I also don't agree with the way the motion has been framed. This is an endorsement of adding it to the budget. That's what the motion says. It goes back to the council table, of course, but that motion says we're endorsing putting it in the budget, which I don't endorse. I haven't reached that stage, so I won't be supporting this referral because I don't endorse the motion that's being referred. I don't see why. I don't see how we have yet reached the decision to continue to use groundwater sources with some of the content of that technical report on behalf of thousands and tens of thousands of urban residents and future residents without announcing public consultation yet again. So I would have preferred that we would have talked about some public consultation options before we make the decision for, excuse me, families and kids for generations potentially drinking groundwater versus some other options without having even asked people what they think or what they would like to see or consider, versus burying it in the budget is yet another capital project where we consider consideration of the budget to be consultation with the public, which I don't think burying it in the capital project, the decision of this magnitude of the water we're going to drink is being done in a way that's responsible. So I don't endorse the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Yes, I think Councillor Woodward's raised some good points here, and it's not just the water that's drunk; it's the water that's used to wash cars and you know, power, steam wash, laneways, and everything else. There's a lot of water that's wasted, which again goes back to the point that Councillor Arneson has made about the need to look at stronger conservation measures. I absolutely agree that this is a policy discussion around the future of water in the township, and I do not personally support the continued use of blended water. So while I supported the amendment, and I do look forward to the Metro presentation, I am not going to endorse sending this to budget. I just don't believe that's what we should be doing with it now.
Okay, thank you. And Mayor Froese.
Thank you. Quick question for staff. Doesn't the budget go to public consultation? Like this is a big capital project, and public do have an opportunity to weigh into it, and I think that's the standard process. I think we have to make a decision. Sitting around and 2 years, almost 2 years, a year and a half of reports, we've been doing this for a long time. We may need to make a decision. We will get public consultation on this, and I'm ready to move forward on this. Thank you. I'll fully support the motion as amended.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to call the question. Those in favor of the main motion? Aye. Mayor Froese, Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Davis, Councillor Kuntz, Councillor Long, and Councillor Ferguson are in favor. Those opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Woodward, Councillor Richter, and Councillor Arneson opposed. It's carried. And there's no other business, and I have a motion for termination.
Termination.
Second.
Councillor Davis, seconded by Councillor Long. We are terminated.